It's BD. Today I am going over the Big Picture Guide 2.0, this time talking about predominantly elongation. This is going to be a reoccurring series as I am turning this into an ebook. So hopefully you will all be interested in it when this is all said and done. However, I don't believe in keeping information secret, so that is why I'm doing this anthology. But if you want to support me and get all this information all at once, I'll be your best bet at the end. Other ways you can support me. Patreon. If you just want to support the cause, sometimes I have coaching spots open. It's really first come, first serve. Then peak male physique for penis enlargement aids that are not needed but can help. And then Vigor at Leviathan Substance, leviathanwellness.com. That is our nitric oxide boosting stimulant-free pre-workout. Unfortunately, it is sold out right now because you guys are just buying it like madmen. I can't thank you enough for it, but give it 2 to 3 weeks for it to be back in stock. Now that my support me, please, is out of the way, let's get into elongation. And like last time, I am just going off the Reddit post and we will go from there. Length in general is the most straightforward thing to gain. You stretch your penis in a variety of ways and you will see gains. However, for optimization and efficiency, we need some form of structure. And for that, we need to understand how the penis is structured and what the corresponding tissues respond best to. Bit of a review, the tunica albuginea is the stiff, collagenous tissue that surrounds the penis. This is what causes firm erections and predominantly controls the size of your erection. So the more tunica albuginea you have, the bigger your erection can be if you can build up enough pressure inside of it in the corpus cavernosum, which is the sinusoidal endothelial tissue that fills with blood, the blood sponge in simple terms, that gives your erection the mass. Today, we are prominently talking about the tunica albuginea as elongation predominantly targets the tunica, because if we can change the shape of that, the longer our penis will be. There are 3 ways to increase the size of the penis. One is erection quality, and that is as simple as it sounds. The bigger and stronger your erections are, I already gave away the secret, the bigger the erections will be. So if you can push more blood into your penis, your tunica albuginea will elongate to its maximum size. Most guys will have a good bit of room to stretch more with more blood in their penis, so they can see pretty easy gains that way. So the first step is always optimization. Now, when we get into the routine part, I will go into more detail. And again, routines are going to be down the line as well. I will give some preliminary routines here, but for now, we're just keeping it surface level. Then the second way is called shaft elongation, and that is when we actually increase the flexibility of the existing tissues and increase the total mass of the tunica albuginea, so making it grow. And then finally, this is where some of my recommendations have changed. We have ligament stretching. Back 20 to 30 years ago, there was the idea that the only way you can gain length is by stretching something called the suspensory ligaments. That is what attaches the penis to the pelvis. And what you're essentially doing is pulling out more internal penis, which doesn't really happen. But that's what your gains are, and therefore it is finite how far those ligaments can stretch. Luckily, that's not the case, and it's not really scientifically sound to begin with. What you're really doing is pulling out any tissue that's riding close to the surface of the hip. As that erection, not erection angle, but as those ligaments loosen up, that tissue releases from the hip. So it will give you more usable length during erection. You're not really growing, but your erect length will be longer. Now, there is no hard evidence for this phenomena. And if you look at ligament surgery, so like people will get their ligaments cut to appear longer, there has been no reported case of erect length gains, but that's not necessarily a 1-to-1. So what I'm saying now is that ligament stretching is optional. It is very helpful for sexual performance, so you can hit different positions. And there's still a good chance you'll get the extra 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch on the ruler. But for people that don't want any potential changes to an erection angle, or people that just don't think it's worth their time, then go ahead and skip it. It's not that big of a deal. But if you do end up skipping ligament stretching, Your gains will be slower than your peers to start, but about month 4, it'll even out if you're really paying attention to other guys in this field anyway. Now, disclaimer, I am predominantly talking about collagenous tissues. I pulled most of my findings from research on tendons and ligaments, since they are also organized collagen structures. Since the tunica albuginea is a collagen structure that is organized, to me it makes absolute sense that the same stimulus will work on the penis as it does on tendons and ligaments. However, I know some of you are sticklers, so if that makes this entire video moot, so be it. I just wanted to let you know before moving forward. Moving on with the theory. We can easily track if our workouts are sufficient based off of a few things, but let me explain the basics. We're going to be talking about strain and its relation to load and time, and then I will get more into the numbers. But understanding that relationship is going to help you understand how to get the most out of whatever your lifestyle is and penis enlargement. So if you don't have a lot of time and you need to use a discrete device, this is going to help you maximize your results. In the main sense, work needs to be in a window of opportunity, right? And I'm not talking about work in like the physics sense, I'm talking about work in its relationship between strain and time. So we have two variables, we have time and strain, I keep saying that. But that means we can have a lot of strain and little time, we can have a lot of time and little strain, or a healthy mix of the two. When I say healthy mix, I'm saying something you can sustainably do. So we can assume that 1 pound for 8 hours a day is not going to do anything, and then 40 to 50 pounds for 40 seconds of strain is just going to lead to injury for obvious reasons. Now, this does not include any changes in load cycle or anything else I'm about to talk about. This is just in the most basic sense. Load and time are the two variables we're controlling. However, collagen has a few properties that we can take advantage of to further maximize our time and load. So collagen and soft tissues in general are supposed to stretch a bit, but there's a certain point where they stretch too much, and that's where they're like, we don't like this, we need to make sure it doesn't happen again, and we are going to try to get bigger and stronger so we can't stretch as much. That is the range we are trying to get into. So if we don't hit that range, we're not going to gain. If we go beyond that range, we're just going to get injured. That is the happy medium we are going for. Now, from the research that I used for the making of this theory, if you want to call it theory, there is a few points on the stress strain curve, the graph that I will probably boop up here, showing that, so anywhere from 100 and 102% is called the toe region. This is normal operation, meaning you won't see any stress to the tissue whatsoever. That is what it's designed to handle. This is where we'll see collagen fatigue. 104 to 108% is where we'll see microscopic failures. So that means the tissue is now fatigued, which is what we are going for. We are not trying to cause massive damage. We're just trying to get it to tire out and then heal up and overcompensate for that strain, so that way it doesn't have to go through it again. But then we're going to keep doing it again and again and again, and then it'll be much bigger in, say, a year from now than compared to the start. This is the sweet spot, and if you want to talk about this like in day-to-day life, this would be like tired knees and ankles after being on your feet all day, because your tendons are tired but they are not injured. However, if you continuously overdo it at the same rate, then that's when stress injuries can happen. So that's why we need to pay attention to this elongation rate. 108 to 110% is macroscopic failures. This is where the tissue starts tearing slightly. This should be avoided for obvious reasons. If you want to talk about this like the day-to-day life again, that would be like an ankle sprain. Not the end of the world, it's a minor injury, but if you don't let it heal properly, it can cause lifelong issues. Then 110% and beyond is macroscopic failures. Think ACL tear, where you completely sever the ligament, in our case, the tunica albuginea. Getting to this point would require so much work. We are talking hours with a bunch of weight for it to stretch that much and finally give. Also, if you work up to that strain rate, it is less likely to rupture. However, there's still going to be significant damage. Optimizing for collagen fatigue in the tunica albuginea. Now, remember how I said collagen fails at the point of load. So when it elongates, that's when it will fail. So the more often we give it chances to elongate and stretch, because collagen is kind of like a little coil. And then as it gets more and more under load, it straightens out. We want it to not coil back up again. So the more fatigue we generate, the less fight the tissues will have moving forward. So as you progress, you'll need less and less weight to elongate. So it's reasonable to assume if you front load a lot of start and stops, you will get better fatigue, therefore better elongation later on. The research I pulled from, I'll try to pop up the chart again, says in about 10 to 15 load cycles, the stress strain curve hits a certain point of the graph where it does not change. That means the tissue is fully fatigued, so the weight you use will be the same weight to reach the same elongation moving forward. It really comes down to pre-fatiguing the tissues and then straining it further to get it to eke out as much of a growth response as possible. So when you are under load, so mid-session, you're still connected to whatever device or static stretch you are doing, you want to be 4 to 6% longer. And then you want to do another 10 to 20 minutes at that strain rate to ensure that it is fatigued enough to excrete the growth factors and elongate and grow. After the session, it will be a little shorter because it will be still difficult to hit that max strain rate with just your hands. You would want to be 2 to 4% longer in that case. I'm calling this fatigue rate. So strain rate, 4 to 6% during your session. Fatigue rate, 2 to 4% after your session. And that's only because you will not be able to generate the same amount of tension with your hands and a ruler at the same time. So what I just laid out is what I am calling the backbone to the interval length protocol. The interval length protocol takes the idea of fatigue and strain and makes it practical for you to follow. This is device agnostic. However, the lower tension devices are going to need longer periods of strain. So that means if you use an ADS like the Falzon Forte, you're going to need, instead of 5 minutes of strain, you're going to need 30 minutes of strain and then take the device off for a bit, do it again. So now that's out of the way. There are two types of sets, fatigue sets and strain sets. Fatigue sets are the short, quick sets at the beginning. Depending on your level, it's going to take anywhere from 10 sets to 15 sets for maximum fatigue. Then, after you've generated a lot of fatigue, you will move on to strain, which is anywhere from 2 sets to 8 sets of 5 minutes. Again, with ADS wears and lower tension extenders, that's going to be 30 minutes. Now, instead of just throwing a bunch of numbers at you, I'm going to pop up a chart. You can pause it and take a look. This is also going to be on r/gettingbigger and in the ebook. So have at it. Now, these are just guidelines. Depending on your own body, you can hit this strain rate much faster than someone else or much slower. So you got to play it by your own penis. The main thing you are going for is slight strain or slight discomfort. So you need to know that you're stretching, right? It feels like you're doing something, but is not eating at every thought and you can easily multitask. Now, this is not going to translate well on YouTube, but we're going to talk about technique a little bit. Manual stretches first. You grip at the glands. I don't have anything other than a dildo and I can't show that on YouTube anymore. This will work. So imagine this is the glands. You grip here and then imagine this is the base. Grip there, you pull, slight discomfort. Angle no longer matters as much as it used to, based off of my research. So, boom, boom, pull, hold for the allotted time. It should feel like a slight burning sensation. Now, best practice is to grip about a finger's width below the glands. That way, when your hand slides up a little bit, you're not going onto the corona, the thing that gives the glands its shape. Then, if you are uncircumcised, either roll the foreskin all the way back or pull it completely tight over the skin, so that way you're not just stretching the foreskin, you're actually stretching the shaft. Now remember, we are not trying to rip our dicks off. We are doing slow, controlled, methodical movements. So that means start slow when you're applying the tension. When you feel slight discomfort, stop and hold. It's quite simple. But believe it or not, a lot of guys just start yanking and then that's when they get injured. Also on the note with the hand, like, stop skin migration so you won't have appearance issues, so you won't look smaller than you really are. And it also keeps all the strain on the shaft, making your workout more efficient and your pelvic floor safe from strain. And that mitigates risk, doesn't fully remove of it. Now, typical extenders. So that would be anything that was made in the past 20 some years. They are relatively common medical devices, first used for Peyronie's treatment, but some people realize that you can gain size with these, and then a bunch of medical companies are like, we can make a lot of money by targeting your insecurities. Let's make this $300 when it's $10 to produce. Anyway, so extenders do work. However, they're probably one of the most inefficient ways to go about it. I'll post a few pictures or show a few pictures of them. What you want to look for when you are using your extender is a vacuum attachment, because that's what's going to keep your nerves safe. Because the traditional type, what we call noose extenders, puts a shit ton of pressure right on the pudendal nerve, which is the nerves that run up and down the penis. So if you piss that nerve off, bye-bye sensation for the next 4 to 6 months. So you need to be very careful with it. Since they are such lower tension, you need to wear them longer. And then there will probably be a certain point where they just don't work for you because their tension load is so low. But you got to work with what you got. In some countries, they're the only thing that's allowed. So just deal with it. Or if you have a very hectic schedule and need something a little more discreet than, say, a penis hanger, then they're good for that as well. Then we have all-day stretchers. They are the absolute worst thing for gains, but they do still work as long as you use them right. The most popular one is Phallicin Forte. And honestly, if you're so hard pressed to get something and just because you're discreet, it's probably your best bet. I don't like the price tag, but you at least know it's going to be quality enough and you'll be able to easily track strain. What you need to worry about with all-day stretchers is if you're getting enough tension, because your hip and knees, you guys can't see them, can eat away at this tension because your penis is rubbing against your leg, causing friction, therefore taking some of that tension. So you got to be careful with that. Again, they need to be worn all day, and then you're going to get better results if you stretch 10 minutes beforehand manually. Like 1 set on, 1 minute on, 1 minute off. You know what I mean. Then we have compression hangers, the old faithful of this field. They've been out for longer than I've been in it. So the first one I know of was 20 some years ago. They do work. They're tried and true. The main issue that they have is that you can only wear them for 20 minutes at a time, since they cut off all blood flow to the glands, and so you don't kill your glands. You need to take it off within 20 minutes. Not that big of a deal. Compared to their cousin vacuum hangers, they need a little more weight to get optimal strain, so like 3 to 4 pounds, because of how they attach. When applying the vacuum hanger, I think I talked about this in my male hanger review. Grip the tip, squeeze as much blood out as you can. Come in and then remove your hand, squeeze down here, and then twist it shut, trying to limit as much blood getting back into the tip as possible. This is for comfort. It's pretty simple. You're going to still want some kind of compression wrap or sleeve to limit friction burns. Like, it's almost imperative that you do it, actually. But anyway, moving on. Vacuum hangers. This is something I gained over an inch with on my own. It is simple, but depending on the day, if you're a little sweaty, it can be a little difficult to keep on. So keep that in mind. As simple as it sounds, a vacuum bell, which I have right here, attaches to the tip of your penis with a sleeve, which is probably gross and dirty because it needs washed, and then you roll that down over your penis, suck some air out to create suction to hold it in place. You attach weights for the allotted time. Over time, you get longer. The biggest complaint with vacuum hangers are blisters. Now, there are two kinds of blisters. There are blood blisters where you suck out too much air and your penis glands, whatever, your glands cannot handle the pressure, causing a burst, and then you'll have blood pooling at the surface. Or you can have like a friction blister, which is when you have a slight abrasion in the skin and then fluid starts to fill it up. Those are much easier to deal with than blood blisters. So go slow, make sure you wear a properly sized bell when you do this, and don't crank up the weight to begin with. High tension extenders. Now, this is a relatively new idea. The first one I know of came out about 2014 to 2015, but there's a new device on the market that I really fell in love with. I will talk about more in another video, but essentially it is hanging on the go with the added benefit of shaft isolation with it, because originally with hanging, some of that stress is going to make its way onto the pelvic floor, and therefore you're not going to get as much strain directly on the penis, and there's a potential for pelvic floor strain if you go too hard too often. The main benefit outside of it just being a little more efficient is that you can wear it anywhere and you don't need like a pulley or anything else. So it's relatively mobile. However, since it is so high powered, it can be difficult to walk around with. So you gotta play it safe. And they are beastly devices. You can really crank up the pressure with it if you're not careful. So again, take it slow and you probably won't have issues. Two more thoughts. First, I touched on this already. Optional ligament emphasis. If you want to gain length via ligament stretching, that's fine. It's only going to take about 2 months to start and then about 3 weeks every 6 months to maximize that flexibility of the suspensory ligaments. The main stretch we do is between the cheeks. So if you stand up and then pull your junk behind you, then you will put nothing but tension on the suspensory ligaments, and it will be a much stronger burn than what it'd be if you're doing the shaft. Starting out, you'll need, if you follow the interval length protocol with it, you'll get much faster results since it is a ligament. It's basically designed to elongate that as quickly as possible. So starting out 10 sets of 45 seconds of BTC stretch, and then 2 sets of 5 minutes of BTC stretch, or whatever device you are using. For touch-up, you are going to want to do this every 6 months for 2 weeks at a time, where you mainly focus on between the cheeks. Same idea, except you'll probably want a few more strain sets as that ligament has gotten stronger. And then angle does not really matter. So other than between the cheeks, any special angles are not going to really cause gains faster than straight out or straight down. And if you grab at the base, like I talked about, straight down and straight out are identical as the ligaments are taking out of it fully. So the only real time you need to stretch left or right is when you have a pitch in your erection, not a curve, a pitch. So your penis is still straight, but it goes a little bit to the right or left. And that comes from masturbation habits usually. So if you're right-handed and you jerk more often than you really should, there's a slight chance that you'll develop a pitch to the right. It's pretty easily fixable. All that really is one head of the suspensory ligament is more flexible than the other. So you need to stretch the opposite ligament to get it to stand straight. Personally, I don't see that much of an issue. You can't really tell unless I do a left picture and then a right picture, and then you can see it going, but it's neither here or there. I understand a lot of you guys are very focused on the aesthetics, so I just wanted to let you know it's not the end of the world if it happens. Okay, now that was dense. When I typed this up, that was probably 11 to 12 pages. So go ahead and rewatch this. Again, the Reddit has an identical post based off this if you want to read it. And I will have an ebook with very similar information, but with the demonstrations side by side so you don't have to flip back and forth between posts eventually. I'm hoping within the next month or two. So, like and subscribe because it's YouTube and it'll help me out a lot. Leviathan Supplements, Peak Male Physique, Patreon. Stay tuned for book stuff. This is BD signing off.